being asked. And I'm looking at even since the announcement was made that the general had passed on Thursday evening, since that time until now, a lot of moving messages from the political class especially, absolving him of any manner of accusations that may have happened before. Yet those unfortunate sentiments are still, I mean, they still circulate even to date. And I'm just wondering, the president said that along those lines that he appointed General Ogolla against any advice from anyone. And I find that contradictory because the statement before the swearing in of the general was that the Defense Council had made a recommendation. So how do we tell what is factual from what he said, what is convenient, and how should Kenya deal with such a situation of the passing of a CDF in such a manner?
Thank you very much, Sam. And such concerns would not necessarily need to be dismissed. But we've also got to have the sensitivities, Sam, that here is a father, a husband, an uncle who has passed on. So even as we have this banter in public, we've also got to start from that level of sensitivities. And it is for that reason, Sam, that I would like to start by, first of all, saying my very heartfelt pole to the wife of General, his two children, his family, the KDF and the country at large, because I had opportunity to meet General Ogolla in person. And what a fine gentleman, and what a loss to the country. I would want to say that we are hearing so much in the public domain, most of which is bordering on speculation. I have had the opportunity to see the chemistry between the head of state and the late general, and observing them at close range, you would get to realize that these are two individuals who have so much respect for each other, who have so much, what would you call it, camaraderie at work. And so for me, I would want to just be left with the memories of the general I knew. And this general that I knew is what we are publicly seeing during this mourning period. The good book tells us that you shall know them by their fruits. And if the fruits of General's personality is the family that he leaves behind, we have had a sneak preview into the kind of family that he has brought up. I would also want to say, Sam, something which is also very fascinating. The whole conversation in this country around mourning rights. Here is a general who passed on and left a will and said that the remains should be interred within 72 hours of his passing. Sam, this is a hard conversation that this country probably needs to have. We've got to ask ourselves, in families, in communities, and in parts of our society, where we find a community spending way much more on their dead than they do on education in a village, that should be a concern for us as a family. And we've also got to disabuse the notion that some of these mourning rites are cultural or are traditional. When you think about it, our mourning rites were very, very different in our pre-colonial times. We cannot own up bad manners and call it our traditions or our culture. I think that there is great leadership in what people like the late General Ogolla have shown this country. People like the late Wangari Maathai. These are thought leaders that challenge us, even in their death, challenge us to even reconsider some of the things that we hold extremely dear. Sam, you're working from a newsroom, and you know some protocols around the broadcast of news. In this whole saga around the death of the late general, we also as a community need to revisit our understanding of how we communicate. For example, we had the son of the general mourning at the funeral that he was receiving the news of his father's death through social media, that he had been alerted that something had gone terribly wrong by his mother. And minutes later, he is seeing on social media pictures being broadcast around of a helicopter that has erupted in flames. You remember that traditionally, newsrooms were the gatekeepers. But with the proliferation of media, where every single citizen becomes a journalist, then it beholds each individual to not only be that sensitive, but to also take into consideration how the protocols around communicating tragedy, and especially where death is involved. The final thing I'd like to say, Sam, has to do with the circumstances around the death of General Ogolla. We are told that he was on a mission to the Rift. There cannot be more tragic news that the Chief of Defense Forces, and this is speculation, could have been brought down by a bandit. We ought to now take the issue of banditry in this country a bit more seriously. I know that there is a lot of work that is happening. I know that the Ministry of Interior has put in quite some work into addressing this banditry situation. But the president himself actually did bring together the Office of the Interior and the Kenya Defense Forces in addressing the issue in the banditry-prone situations. And there will be a place for investigation into all this banditry activity if we are going to have an investigation that is going to tell us what exactly happened to the helicopter that came down. What is important?
Honorable Kiarie, let me ask you, is it possible that 4 days later there's not even a hint of what happened?
It is possible. Remember again, this is the Chief of Defense Forces, and each and every Kenyan is asking to know what happened, and not only to get news that is speculation, but the actual facts. So I believe that if this investigation, which I believe goes to the military, it is going to be carried out with military precision. And military precision does demand that, for example, that information is only released as and when it is verified. So I would be keen to call upon myself and other Kenyans to also be be patient with the investigation that is going to happen. It's going to inform a lot going forward. As I said, it's going to inform on issues of how the VIP are handled, how air transport of very important people in government and other high places are ferried. But most importantly also, the situation around the coming down of that helicopter in a banditry-prone area, where I know a lot of work is going into not only disarming the warring parties, but also working on long-term solutions, which include the construction of infrastructure, the construction of schools in these banditry-prone areas, the total disarming of warring communities, the stopping of flow of small arms from through porous borders from our neighbors and so on. So this is going to be an extremely wide investigation that might give very far-reaching recommendations.
I hear you, Honorable KJ. Again, I ask you this. It was on Thursday afternoon. The president put it at 2:20 p.m. Up until now, there are 2 survivors. There were troops on the ground. Nobody has a hint, or it's only that information has to be managed.
Information is being managed, and I believe it will be managed. But we have people, even you yourself have carried as a media house of first-hand accounts. And I would believe that is as much as we have so far, pending official communication that would probably be coming from the right sources. And I believe in due course, we will get to know exactly what happened. What we have right now is just eyewitness accounts of a helicopter that came down with propellers that were not spinning, that eventually burst into flames. That's as much as we know.